Do you struggle with fat and thin contact? We're going to be talking about exactly why they happen and what forces within the golf swing are causing these strikes. So before we talk about what we don't want to do, let's talk about what we do want to do. So we want optimal strike. We want premium contact. Now why? If we can get great strike, then the ball's going to go as far as it can, it's going to fly as far as it can and as straight as it can. And the distance control is going to be super repeatable. So what's optimal strike? Optimal strike is when the ball is on the ground and we are able to strike the center of the face from heel to toe, and we're able to strike the ball first and the ground after. To do that, the golf club has to be traveling downward. Okay, we're going to come back to that in a moment. So we know the optimal strike is striking the ball first and the ground after. What is not optimal strike then? What does fat and thin really mean? Well, all that fat and thin means, it's a slang golf term for catching the ground before the ball. That's a fat shot. So ground first contact, then the ball. All the grass, all the muck, all the dirt gets caught between the club face and the ball, and it takes loads of speed, loads of yardage off it. Very unpredictable. Thin contact then is the opposite. That's where we don't hit the ground at all. We just hit the ball only, and we tend to impact it right off the bottom edge of the golf club. And at this point, there is much less loft in the club, and we tend to see those shots come out much lower with much less spin, and they tend to run along the ground depending on how much off the bottom you catch them. Why do we catch it fat and thin? So the point the golf club reaches the golf ball, it is traveling upward. It is not traveling downward enough. This is referred to as angle of attack. That is the vertical angle that the golf club is moving on as it reaches impact. If that club is moving upward as it strikes the ball, it is nigh impossible to strike the ground after the ball without catching the ground before. So we need to get the club moving downward. We need a descending angle of attack. That's number one. So number two, we can actually still fat or thin the ball with a descending angle of attack. Why? Hey friend, I hope you're enjoying the video. Today I want to give you a free gift to thank you for watching. I'm giving you access to my proven system for taking 10 shots off your scores without hitting any balls in 5 simple steps. Just hit the link in the description of this video to access. Please like, comment and subscribe to the channel. It means a massive amount to me. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Have an incredible day. Not only do we have to worry about the angle the club moves down as, we have to worry about how deep the golf club actually goes. So for instance, if my golf ball was on the tip of my palm just here and the golf club is coming in, and it actually is traveling downward at the time that it reaches the ball, but it just goes too deep into the ground. Well, it can still be traveling downward, but it's going to catch the ground back here because the depth of the club is going just too deep into the ground. So we need to bring that back up. So we want the club going deep enough that it reaches the ground just after the ball, but not too deep, so that even though it's traveling downward for that optimal ball ground strike, it doesn't catch the ground before the ball. So 2 elements, we've got our angle of attack needs to be downward, and we've got our low point needs to be at an appropriate depth. So how can we adjust those variables? So one way of changing angle of attack is to change your ball position. The further back you have it in your stance, generally speaking, the more downward the golf club is going to travel. How can we change low point depth? Well, quite simply, low point depth we can change by how tall we stand. The lower we are to the ground, the longer the club is going to get, the more into the ground it's going to go. The taller we stand, the shorter the club gets, the more we bring it up out of the ground. Now, obviously, we have our arms, we have our levers to talk about, but general concepts, you can control both of those elements using what we've just described there. And what we want to look out for, on those ground early contacts, you can actually tell whether you've caught the ground early because the club is not traveling downward or the club is going too deep. And here's how you can tell. All you've got to do is listen. And you just listen for the sound of impact. Now, if you hear that the club impacts the ground before and it still impacts the ground after, so it's like a long thud, especially if you're hitting balls off a mat. I've hit the ground, I can then hear the ball being struck, I can then still hear mat being struck. It's very likely that the club had a low point. It went too deep, and so it sticks in the ground for longer. Whereas if you hear that it's ground first and then ball and there's no mat after the ball, then you know that you have struck it with too upward an angle of attack. The club wasn't moving downward enough. Great way to check that off a range mat. Great drill. Time for a drill that's going to actually help you control your angle of attack and your low point. We're going to take an alignment stick. I'm going to place it on the ground and I'm going to align it in the center of my stance. Now, quite simply, all I'm going to do here is address the front edge of it. And I'm just going to try and strike the ground just after the alignment stick. And I want to see a depth that's literally just going to brush the grass, maybe take a small chunk, but it's not going to go too deep into the ground. This is a great way of controlling low point depth. If you can get really good at hitting off the grass without even a ball there, you're going to really get used to not taking too big a divot. So there, because I've hit the ground just after that stick, I know that the club is traveling downward. And because it's not too deep into the ground, I know there that the depth isn't too deep. So great way there of controlling low point and your angle of attack. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Drop me a comment and let me know what you've taken from this video. I'd love to hear it. As always, have an incredible day, enjoy your golf, and if I can support in any way, drop me a line anytime. I'm here to help.